12. So
Oh, I like that.
welcome everybody to our second in our autumn series, an autumn and winter series of mental fitness. And we're really pleased that you've joined us for the second session with Ross McWilliam again, our expert from Mindset Pro. And today we're going to be talking about coping under pressure and developing optimum resilience and managing stress. You're very welcome to put comments, please do, in the chat panel by the side, and Ross will be asking questions as we go. So do engage with this. Everything's confidential amongst us, so don't share. Don't worry about what you're saying. We keep this session closer together, and Ross will talk us through what to expect in this session and what we're going to be doing. So I'm pleased to hand over to Ross.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, 2 points there. If we finish around 1:45, can you stop me 5 minutes before that, 22, to ask some questions live if we need to? And secondly, yeah, that confidentiality, that comes on to one of my first slides, which you can see now. Whatever we say and discuss here is confidential as far as I'm concerned, and I like to think everybody's on the same wavelength there. Respect people emotionally, religiously, culturally, non-stigmatized, good listening skills, which has been apparent since we started last a few months ago. Ask your questions at any format. We want to make you happy to learn, to develop, to grow, and that's replicated in the mindset of Kaplan there. So maybe visually, that's why we want to look about things. Yeah, that resilience, that managing stress, using stress in a good way. And we'll find out today that the stress gets a bad reputation. And the guy who invented it, and I'll come on to this guy later on, Hans Selye, he said stress is a good thing. We need it to get out of bed in the morning, to go to work, to play sports, art, drama, all this sorts of stuff. So it gets a bad reputation. And also I'll talk about resilience. And that seems to can't do any wrong, resilience. Everybody thinks resilience, more of it means better. And I'm going to just have a few lines of inquiry today to think that is more better. Because it's really important to get that balance right in our life, to get to flow, so we can look like we can capture that sun. So a quick recap. We all know since March 2020, we've gone through the COVID, and I often refer to this Kubler-Ross change curve, which has got certain parallels with COVID. Now, this change curve was created in the 1960s to explain grief. And you could actually use this and look at the changes in emotions to apply it to COVID. So when COVID initially happened in March 2020, some people were in shock, some are even in denial then and denial now, getting frustrated and maybe getting depressed. And there was that real fear of life being challenged, of death, of long COVID, of complications with work and seeing friends and isolation. But there are always people in society who then experiment with this new normal and they make a decision to integrate and grow with it. Now, that's not a value judgment, and everybody's circumstances can be slightly different from one another's. So I'm not saying to you now, you must get on with it and suck it up and just move on through these emotions. We could find ourselves going backwards and forwards in these emotions, depending on our circumstances. And that's my real point here, that everybody deals with grief and COVID differently. So it's not a value judgment, respecting each other, recognizing personally, internally, when we don't feel so good certain days, certain weeks, or even certain months, and not to beat ourselves up. Because if we're constantly striving and beating ourselves up, I think you guessed this, we're not going to win. Yeah, we want to win at life. We want to enjoy it. And if we enjoy it and feel fulfilled, and we can make the progress in small steps, that's the way to go. So like anything in life, I always say this phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And let's have that in mind today as we go through this presentation. So resilience, some people see it as do you bend or break? And it's a very simplistic definition in one sense, a statement. But I don't think it's wholly true. And I think we've been brought up on this this tablet of resilience. Like I said before, the more we get of it, the better we're going to be. If we haven't got it, we're not good enough. And there's an aspect of comparison in this as well, which I'm going to bring out in a newspaper study shortly. But I think resilience is deeper than this, okay? Some people think about it's the SAS style of kill or be killed, and there's loads of stories which you'll probably know, but I'm just going to give you one now of a guy in 1985. He was climbing with a friend. His friend had put him off this cliff to almost certain death, and he survived in the desert, which was really cold at night and over 100 degrees during the day for 3 days with broken bones. And he came back and said, I've got super resilience. And he does, and he did. But resilience in society is not often about life and death. It's often about managing certain levels of resilience to give us better performance. So this aspect of bend or break, I sort of veer away from in regular sort of life. And I just want to encourage you to do the same as we go through this journey today. So to give it a wider definition, it's keep going, don't give up, adaptability, learn and reinvent better, and bounce back ability. You've probably heard those before. You're probably nodding away now. That's resilience, yeah? But I want to extend it further. And this is the bit that will give you longer lasting resilience for you, okay? So if you want to talk about somebody who knows about resilience, Rick Hanson is a world expert, and he talks about 12 resilient factors. I'm not going to put them on the screen for you now. And I almost can guarantee that maybe half of those you wouldn't think you'd associate with resilience. This self-esteem or self-worth, or generosity to ourselves, or gratitude. And there are some things in there like compassion, which you probably wouldn't have thought about. Resilience, because resilience is beat myself up, isn't it? To keep going and suck it up. And Rick Hanson talks about if you don't have that softness with resilience, that compassion, that awareness when you're doing too much, it's going to beat you up and it's going to curtail your effectiveness. So it's a play between, yes, pushing, but also pulling back. And if you can get that simple concept in your head now, it will serve you well for the rest of your life. And I think Rick Hanson's work great. And I think on a personal level, I've always been full of resilience. But I've come unstuck by being too resilient for too long. And that culminated in a few panic attacks about 7 years ago, where I'm just pushing on every aspect of my life. And I wasn't taking into account these 12 resilient factors. You might have come across that as well. And maybe then you might have taken another turn that says, well, I'm not resilient at all because I couldn't deal with this. We've all got different levels of resilience, but we must be careful not to go overboard with it. And if you want a good definition, I love this one. Resilience is not just for surviving the worst day of your life, it's for thriving every day of your life. So it's something we do all the time, not to get to an end point. Oh, I've arrived. I've got to that point. I've done it. Now I can relax. We should be doing that every day. That work and push and reflect and congratulate and that gratitude should be part of our ongoing resilience. Okay. So 5 resilience questions for let's cut to the chase a bit here. Let's see if we can answer these. And every time you get a yes from these, you'll get 20%. If you can get 100%, then you've got 100% resilience. It's just a simple measure. Let's have a go at it. Do you finish most, if not all, things that you start? If that's a yes, you get 20%. Do you pay attention to detail? Are you diligent? Yeah. If you do, 20%. Do you have clear goals of what you want to achieve? And a lot of people who talk about not just resilience, but life and targets and achievements talk about if you haven't got a goal, how do you know when you get there? Yeah. And to be resilient, what will take your resilience away straight away is being aimless. You need to have some focus. So that's another one for yes. Can you stick at a task even when it goes wrong? Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? That's challenging you, because if you can, you've probably got a good measure of resilience there. And the final one, are you prepared to put in extra work, more study and more patience to achieve your goals? And that's the one I struggle with sometimes. I can do it, but we've got to be very careful. So there's 5 questions, 20% each one. If you've got 100%, if you want to put some in the chat box, it'd be interesting to see that. Yeah. And it's not a value judgment. If you say, I'm not going to put it because I've got 60%, I'm not judging you. Yeah. It's how emotionally intelligent you are with your emotions. Because we're just developing this concept of resilience. It's not all push, push, push. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on a bit more. I'm a big believer that when people say, I need more resilience, and that's fine. Okay, I think we've got a lot of resilience in the past that we don't associate or recognize or connect with. And I call this retro resilience. Now, I must have quite a bit because I'm 60 years of age and I've been through a lot of things, traveled, injuries, qualifications, jobs, all these sorts of things that when I look back, there's a lot of stuff I've been through that have made me resilient. But I actually think I'm in the best place now I've ever been because of those experiences, good and bad. So let's just do a little exercise now. I'm going to ask some rhetorical questions. So remember a time, place, and occasion when you demonstrated resilience. Just think for that a second. Okay. Maybe it's at college, maybe at work, maybe with a friend or partner. How did you succeed? Was it push, 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 bounce back ability? Was it some time for reflection? Was it some time for, as Rick Hansen said, that self-gratitude? Recognizing you've done well for today. What qualities did you use to be resilient in the past? Yeah, like I said before, the elephant, one bite at a time, take it steady, do something every day. Or did you go in different phases of attack? What support did you receive? Because we all think resilience is on our own. It's actually not, and that could be quite dangerous. So what support do you receive when you were being resilient? What lessons did you learn that you maybe put into your next challenge that came along that required resilience? There's always lessons. We don't often see them sometimes. Do you use these lessons today? I certainly use the lessons today. I don't push myself 100 miles an hour week after week after week. I know there's a payback. Have you developed your resilience since? And we sometimes call this smarter resilience. Are you smarter in resilience now than you were a couple of years ago? It's an interesting question, isn't it? How have you developed your resilience? For me, it's about just doing a bit less. And I have an equation that I use in my head. Just a bit less expectation and a bit more reward. It seems to keep me on the right side of resilience now. And I use that quite a bit. If no, what do you need to do to develop it today? And the last one, are you being too hard on yourself? Okay. Are you being too, oh, number 10, I forgot that one. There you go. Interesting question. Do you think resilience is a combination of trying to improve, but not beating yourself up? That's linked to question 9, very similar. Yeah, do you recognize that when you're being resilient? Anyway, that's just some questions to think about your past. So you might be sat there today thinking, I need loads of resilience. I don't know where I'm going to go. I need it for the things that come up in my life, but you might have a lot already. Okay. Now, I've given Jenny a specific measure on resilience. We're not going to do this today, but if you need to do 12 questionnaires from a woman called Angela Duckworth, this is world renowned. It's a very good measure of what we call this high level resilience, almost like the SAS type resilience. But if you want to measure this, Jenny's got that and she can send it out to you. Okay. So I've been hinting at this and talking about it. And I do think most people have got lots of resilience, and it depends, on your circumstances. You've got support around you, you've learned from the past, you've got a clear goal ahead of you, and you're willing to take it easy on yourself from time to time. If you can do that, you'll probably avoid this caveat of resilience by being too hard on yourself, locked into an obsolete and old-fashioned achievement orientation. And it's good to be brought up in a certain way to pass your qualifications, to go to university, to get a job. But it might not be a linear relationship. It might have a few dips and a few turns in that as well. So don't think you have to achieve every single second of every single day. And again, have you misinterpreted past and current events? So when you thought you weren't resilient, you could have been very resilient. Have your needs and wants changed? So do you have to demonstrate resilience every single week? Think about that for a second. We all think if we're not being resilient, we're not effective. But, the question is, are we? Knowing when to use it and how to use it. But the thing is with resilience, it's finite. And if you read all the books on resilience, and I've read a few of them, it says you can wear it out, very much like motivation. So you have a certain amount of it before it starts to slipping down. And your body, trust me, as you get old, it will tell you when it is had too much resilience, and listening to the body is very powerful. So there is a caveat, and a guy called Gabor Maté, if you want a really good reference on a book, this is a naturalized Canadian physician, and he is a world-renowned speaker on how stress, we're going from resilience to stress now, how stress can eat away at our resilience that make us very brittle when we want to be quite malleable. And he says that if you're constantly pushing all the time, that first definition of resilience, you might be storing up problems for later on in life, short, medium, but certainly long term. And he quotes lots of examples of, for instance, Jacqueline Dupre, who was a fantastic musician, and she sadly died early in her 40s. And he suggested one of the reasons that played a part in her death, not the reason why, but played a part, was that constant pushing, performing to be better. And she was trying to please her mum initially, and then Jacqueline Dupre realized she wanted to not escape her mother, but she wanted to be herself and didn't feel the pressure to perform just for her mother. And the body took its toll on her. And he quotes many examples beyond that where the body can hurt us ourselves if we don't watch it as we get older in life. Interesting book to read. I'd fully recommend it. More recently, in 2021, a few months ago, a reporter for The Guardian, Miriam Alexander, talked about the NHS, how they're being very resilient and they're pushing hard and dealing with all the COVID patients. But she noticed a very dangerous trend where everybody was looking to be resilient. We weren't looking for the ones who were struggling with resilience, who are needing support. And she compared it to the canary in the cage. And if the canary is not singing in a cave when you're mining, that means the canary is dead because of the methane gases. So she used an analogy to say to people in any organization, we've got to work to the ones who are struggling. I don't like the word weakest, the ones who are struggling to get the resilience up to keep up with an ever pace of change. And she said, that's real resilience, corporate resilience, where we're working for each other. And, we know we have good days and better days. And working with your organization, your people, and recognize when someone needs a bit of support sometimes, it's very important to be able to recognize that and to offer it, because you might need that at some point in the future. So this is where, again, resilience can get a bad rap at times. Now, let's move on to stress. Stress is interesting. I said at the start that stress was invented by this guy, Hans Selye, in the 1950s, and he used it to explain how the body performs when we have certain tasks in front of us. And he talks about two chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol, and they're good. They're our friends. But if we keep producing these all the time by being stressed or trying to be too resilient, bounce back too much and being too much up there and to perform, and expectations and pressure and comparison, he said it can come back and hurt us. And if you want a really extreme example of this, there are certain professions like teaching, for instance, where they're constantly performing all the time and being resilient and changing curriculum, changing children, changing staff and management and schools, lots of different changes there. And the average age of a teacher who's worked 30 years is around 8 years life expectancy when they hit 60. That doesn't sound very much, does it? Work all your life and have 8 years to live. It's only an average. But he said, if you want to extend your average, you've got to work with stress, know when it's working for you, know when it's working against you. And the same goes to resilience, that if we're being too resilient for too long, be very careful, because these chemicals, and literally, and these are his words, can rot away the organs inside your body over time. So being supersonic is great. Being supersonic all the time might lead us down dangerous paths we don't want to go down to. So now I've scared you. Let's look at some reality. We're all looking for that sweet spot, that stress sweet spot. And if you get in this inverted U here, right at the top, okay, you can, just before the top, it gets the zone of optimal performance. Yeah. Knowing when you're getting a bit burnt out before you get burnt out is critical. So awareness is key. So if we don't have enough stress on one side, we can get bored. We also call this the rust out syndrome. Yeah. And I think you guess where I'm going with this. If we have too much stress, stress harms us to the right-hand side, we get exhausted, we can get illnesses, mild panic attacks, and then we can get the traditional burnout. And sometimes with burnout, there's no way back. There are sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. But obviously, if we're working on our zone of optimal performance, we're enjoying what we're doing, we're in flow, we've got a good measure of resilience, but we need to remember to keep topping that up by having that awareness, that reflection, that relaxation. And if you can understand where you are now in terms of work, in terms of relationships, in terms of sport or arts and hobbies and drama, whatever you're at there, to get to that level is good. If you're constantly to the right of that, be careful, because there could be a payback. And that equation I mentioned before about a bit less expectation and a bit more reward is a very good way of looking at this. If you're not too sure, just expect a touch less and reward a bit more, keeping the right side of that inverted U.
Ross, I'm just going to come in here for a second and let you know two of the questions that have come in so that we can pick them up through the session. One is, how do we regulate our emotions when we are stressed? And the second one is, how can developing resilience help us to fight mental challenges?
Yeah, let's just pick those up. Is that just higher up there? I'm just going to see that. Let's
in the Q&A, it's in the Q&A panel.
Okay, Q&A. Okay, let's go to the Q&A panel. Let's go to that one. How do we regulate our emotions when we are stressed? Awareness, first of all. Sometimes we act, and we just act out of habit and rote and past behaviors. So it's a matter of stopping, literally stopping. Why am I upset today? Why is things not working out? Why am I feeling a bit flustered at the edges? So that awareness is the first thing. And if you said to somebody, oh, just keep chilling out, keep relaxing, that can make you more stressed because you want to perform something. You want to be in that U shape there where you're just at the top and doing really well. So after awareness, you've got to work out, how do you feel today? And today might be different from tomorrow. So get the context of where you are at this particular moment on a Monday rather than the Friday, how you feel it now at this age and you felt at another age. So then it's about talking to somebody and listening to somebody who knows you very well. And it's a really good point, this, especially peers. Peers give us very accurate feedback. So if I'm a bit stressed out, I might say to Jenny, I'm a bit stressed today, something a bit different. What do you think? And Jenny might not give me an answer, but she might just listen to me, and she might give me some words of encouragement that I remember who I really am. That retro resilience, you can do before. If you've got to do this deadline, Ross, that's fine, but then reward yourself afterwards. And I think that talking to somebody else is very powerful. And that's one good way of regulating those emotions. And I think another way is the obvious way. We talk about well-being, the ways to well-being, of the obvious ones of diet, sleep, exercise, and being connected, which is similar to being vulnerable. And, if you take account of those, a good indicator is poor sleep. And so when we're not sleeping well, we feel more stressed. When we feel more stressed, we feel a bit guilty about the resilience aspect. It's a short question, but there's a long answer, and I've hoped to answer some of that. I'm going to go on to the next one. How can developing resilience help to fight mental challenges? Well, I think it can, but you can be the last diagram on the board there, that burnout. And when we get burnout, we can recover, but it might take us longer. So just trying to keep at the top of something where we're enjoying it. And when that enjoyment becomes a drudge and it becomes hard work day after day, week after week, that's the thing to be aware of. So to develop your resilience, you might have to pull back if you want more, rather than to push more to think you'll get more. Can resilience build our positive mindset? Resilience is part of your mindset, and we have an idea of how much resilience we've got. And I think we can draw stuff from the past. But if you talk again to the person who knows you really well, they'll probably tell you you've got more resilience than you think you have yourself. And that juxtaposition where you think you haven't got enough and somebody says you've got more than enough could be just enough for you then to understand that concept of resilience for yourself. And a good friend will give this to you. Yeah,
that really links, doesn't it, nicely to the compassion and being kind to yourself.
Yeah, and the compassion is good. How do you measure it? Because most scientists say, how do you measure something? So to measure something, we had those 10, 20%, 100% on the screen, but we've got the grit test as well. And if you want to measure how resilient you are at times, do it now, not today now, but do it later on today, and do it before Christmas, do it after Christmas. So get some feedback all the time of how you're feeling. So feedback is very powerful from our friends, from measurement tools. Whereabouts are you on this U shape, this inverted U? That awareness, that implementation of small actions, of not pushing too much for too long, too often, you will survive, and then you'll start to thrive. Let's move on to the next one then. We're doing really well for time as well, which is good. Measure your stress. Here we go. This won't take too long. Have a look at this. Where are you right now? Where are you right now? And I'm suggesting if you are beyond 7 now, which is going to the higher stress level, you'll probably feel that you're not having enough resilience. You tend to go together. That awareness that maybe I'm not resilient enough because I'm stressed. And when we're nice and chill, we probably think, yeah, I've got a lot of resilience. I'm just not using it today. I'm storing it up because we know it's finite. Can I ask you, Jenny, where do you feel today on that stress measure?
Well, this morning, I think I'm on a 3 to 5. But Wednesday is often the busiest day of the week for me, and everything seems to happen on a Wednesday in a stressful way. So I think I get up to, 6, 7, 8 on a Wednesday.
And do you enjoy the Wednesdays more than the Mondays or not?
No, I don't enjoy the Wednesdays or the
So
Mondays.
do you prophesy that it's going to be bad, and it generally is, so that self-fulfills itself? So you think, I can't, go on.
You could think of it like that. I try and prepare for Wednesdays. So I always make sure I've got an hour clear at the start of the day, because I think what might come in on a Wednesday. And I don't do too much on Wednesday evenings, just to kind of recover almost.
That's very sensible, to pre-plan it and build in some escape pattern afterwards, then to block it off and then take a break from that. I think the preparation is good, because preparation, it's the opposite of chilling out in some ways. You're being hyper focused to make sure something works. And I think that's part of being resilient, being planned and prepared. And so when you do that and then perform and evaluate performance and afterwards give yourself that space, you've got a very nice little routine going on there. You might have to at some point dig into your retro resilience, find that you've done this before many times, and why am I getting a bit towards 8 and 9 on this Wednesday when I know what's going to come? I've handled it regularly all the time very well. So why am I boxing it off differently than a Monday and Tuesday? Okay, there might be more volume of work. And stress, we talk about stress with 3 factors: the frequency, the intensity, and duration. I suspect you know all that ready on Wednesday. There might be more frequency, might be more intensity, might be more duration, hence your preparation and relaxing. But since you know those variables, then I think you should be going to Wednesday thinking, show me what you can do, asking the situation to see if you can then, do you want to get into 7 or 8 an hour? I'm not playing that game. I'm going to give you a Monday's response today, which is about 3 and a 4, because I've done my preparation, I've got my relaxation to look through forward to afterwards, and I've got some cross-referencing with good friends afterwards as well. And I can even do a measure to prove myself right as well. So I think that is more than likely something that's built up over time, based on some evidence of more work, intensity and frequency and duration. But you've got to treat it just like a Monday. And you might find your best performances come on your Wednesday when you're just that more relaxed with it all. Okay, there you go. There's a bit of advice, which I don't like to give, but measuring your stress is good. It's all about the awareness. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I talked briefly before about sleep, diet, exercise, being connected and vulnerable. I just want to concentrate on what I call the nuances that would help us have better resilience, and I won't say less stress, but the right amount of stress. Stress is a good thing. Yeah, let's get that right in our head. Stress is a good thing. So using stress positively, when it's there for that Wednesday for Jenny, she's thinking, right, I've got to perform. I love the opportunity to perform. I don't see it as stress. I think it's a chance for me to show what I can do. Much like doing an examination where many people get scared, I quite like exams because it's my chance to show you what I know. And I think Wednesday is a chance for you to show you, Jenny, what you can do in a nice, composed manner. And that's what Wednesdays will be for you in future. So using stress positively, looking forward to the Wednesday, looking forward to relaxation, looking forward to cross-referencing with my friends, myself, partners, or whatever. Did that go well today? Do we do this? Do we do that? And I'll measure it as well. Then you've got it all boxed off. So the second bit is, as we mentioned this throughout this morning, is be careful of the caveat of resilience, beating yourself up, not showing that gratitude, not showing that compassion. lowering your expectations slightly, and raising rewards slightly. Being vulnerable, speaking to somebody who may be just listening to you, doesn't have to give you advice, who will just respect you and maybe tell you then at some point that you're doing a great job, that I can tell you the evidence and I can show you this and I can demonstrate that to you, just for you to have that bit of support. It's very important to have that number 3, to be vulnerable. If we think we're brilliant and super resilient all the time, we could be, but there might be a time in the future where we're not. So showing that vulnerability is a strength. Harmony, collaboration, and visualization. We're talking on this slightly in more detail the next session in November. But if you're fighting all the time, fighting your body, fighting routines, fighting time deadlines, fighting, sadly, colleagues at work to do some work, no harmony is being developed, and we've got a flow in life. When we flow, we can keep the top of that inverted U. When we don't flow, we'll either back away from the challenge and get rust out, or go headlong into it and end up with burnout. The last one, being connected. You're part of a big organization, Kaplan. I think I'm right here, Jenny. 10,000 employees on Kaplan.
10,000 apprentices.
Apprentices, sorry. How many employees then?
Oh, a lot. We're a global business.
No, there you go. So you're all connected within Kaplan. You're connected as human beings, connected as young professionals, or maybe a different part of your career, but apprentices for sure, that young development part of your career. Nobody gets it right all the time. In fact, it's learning and embracing those, I don't like to say mistakes, those learning challenges, experiencing those, learning from them and putting to practice better next time is something that is part of the course. Yeah, and the amount of times I've done presentations, and I won't do that again, I'll change it differently next time. And then things tend to work better when you put a bit of work in and you reflect and you cross-reference and you move on. And I think sometimes when we have a bad experience, we can dwell for too long. And it's this being connected that brings you back into the present. So there are some very subtle nuances here. It revolves around not working too hard for too long, recognizing we're in a good day, knowing where your support's coming from, and within all this, writing it down. When we write stuff down, it tends to be more simple to understand. And I think that's a really important point, because we can get all jumbled up and have an expectation that's been built up from a young age, that young expectation might not serve as well as we get older. Okay, some interesting stuff there. And again, we've touched on this throughout all the things. So let's leave you with some nuggets before we get some more questions. So what next? If you can, measure resilience and remeasure it. I think it's important to see where you're up to on this. You might look at trends. You might be better at maybe doing resilience in the winter months than summer months. It might be something that's seasonal for you. Measure your stress. Do that quick 10 measures there. And identify your triggers. We haven't mentioned that before now, but what are your triggers? For me, it's when it's cold. And when I'm aching, my body's aching. That makes my resilience a bit more brittle. So on those days where that happens, I don't push myself as much. This afternoon, I could do another presentation and create it. I don't feel like doing it, and I don't feel less value for not doing it. And that's the way I develop and maintain my resilience. Recognize you probably have more resilience than you know. And if you're still not sure about that, ask 3 people who know you very well. Ask them to rate your resilience out of 10, then ask them to give you evidence. It's a really good exercise that when you get the evidence, you, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I did do that, and that was resilience. Use it carefully and appropriately. Like motivation, it's finite. You can't keep producing day after day, week after week, month after month. Ask all those teachers who had less than 8 years to live, yeah? You can't keep doing that. You've got to use it appropriately for the task in hand and building things. Like Jenny said, that wonderful Wednesday, that new acronym for wonderful Wednesday, the 2 W's, because you still put the preparation and do the relaxation. We've mentioned this already, feedback, especially of peers. Your peers are the most accurate form of feedback, probably better than a measure of your intelligence or your ability, and probably better than what you think you know yourself. Yeah. And we talked about that equation. A bit less expectation, a bit more reward. It sounds counterintuitive, but actually works for you well when we're feeling a bit stressed and a bit like resilience is being challenged. And that's something that I feel very powerful about. Okay, Jenny, I've got the last slide there, which is about the next one, next session we've got, which is on November the 17th. But
Yeah,
let's go to some questions, can we?
absolutely. We've got some really good questions in. We've had one around why is it important to measure stress, first of all.
Okay, right. So why is it important to measure stress? Stress and resilience go together. The co-foundational within each one. But stress is part of this awareness. If I could to give you an example, a mental health condition like depression has got a big aspect of stress in there. And there's about 120 million people in the world who experience depression. A third of those people, 40 million, get treatment and they get recovery within a few months. 90% of them feel much better. There's two cohorts who don't get treatment for depression, and 40 million don't get treatment for depression because they're not aware they're depressed. So I think being aware of stress and resilience and measuring it just makes it in the forefront of our thinking, makes it more tangible and visible, and we can put a value on it. Okay, so being aware of something is the first part to change. We're talking about this in our next session in November about awareness of the need to change, then specific actions, and then feedback. So that's the first point there for that. What's the next question, please, Jenny?
Next question is around how to deal with annoyance and bad mood without knowing why. And does that relate to stress?
Is that the self?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's this awareness of recognizing, are you better on certain days? Yeah. Or is there no pattern at all? It's a simple first question. I used to work with a lot of damaged children a long time ago. We found Mondays and Fridays the worst days for the performance, for the behavior, for their attendance, even because they were dealing with lots of stuff outside that stable school environment and structure that was very volatile. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we got the best out of the kids. You might have something like that as well. So identifying the working week, where are you? And I mentioned before about seasons. When it gets colder, I don't perform as well, not just physiologically, but emotionally. I'm always feel like I'm under siege. Whereas in summer and warmer months, I feel light and invigorated and ready to go for the challenge. So that recognition where you are in life, weekly, monthly, seasonally, is very powerful. Um, what was the last part of that question, Jenny?
Is it related to stress?
Um, like if you look at that inverted U, we need some stress, and stress gets a bad rap. It does, but you've got to work out when is it that you feel good? When are you in flow? And try and be a detective on this and work out what factors are doing this to make you feel in flow. When I've exercised, when I've done some good work and I've got some good feedback and I've got more work coming in, when I get that nice loop going on, I can take on the world. Yeah. So it's recognizing when you're in that nice loop and trying to put the factors in place to put you back in this loop, like your Wednesday of preparation, performance, and then evaluation. Next question, please, Jenny.
Next question is about the warning signs of stress. And a sub question from that is stress linked to anxiety and panic attacks?
Yeah, sometimes we don't know we're stressed. We just don't know. We're just juggling stuff. That's what I'm supposed to do, especially men. Men are very bad at this, very good at being very bad at it, should I say. So of just pushing and carrying on and just grinding away. And we know that resilience is finite. We know that stress is very stealthy, it can creep up on us and accumulate very quickly. So it's so powerful to be able to recognize that. Um, you know, I'm just going to the questions here. Is this the deal with annoyance, bad mood? Is that the one?
The last one in that list is, may I ask, what are the warning signs of
Yeah.
stress?
So the body might start talking to you. Some people have those panic attacks, those pulses. A big one is stress, is the stomach being upset. 90% of serotonin receptors reside in our stomach. So if you're getting stressed, it's probably something to do with the stomach being upset, being more vulnerable to smaller infections and diseases like coughs and colds. Put cover to one side, but the general stuff that we normally get, more vulnerable, a bit more tired, and a bit more hesitant to take on more work. And then, if you don't watch it, a larger part of stress is that siege mentality where we just want to keep what we've got. We don't want to take any more responsibilities on. And then you find if you're getting really stressed is that small things happen and you perceive them as big things. So you might have something happen outside and somebody just slightly bumps into you and you take a personal affront to it, that they're being rude and ignorant, but they just didn't see you and they bumped into you by mistake. So we can misinterpret the world when we're stressed in all the bad outcomes. So that's a really good sign. So the body can talk to us in terms of our stomach, headaches, memory loss, tiredness, but also misinterpretation of events that weren't harmful to us, but we're perceiving as harmful. They're really good indicators of that.
Yeah. And there's a question in the chat panel, Ross, which I think almost encapsulates the whole session. So it's a little summary maybe. And somebody has asked, what are your absolute top tips for being more resilient at work?
Having a good team around you. Sometimes you can control that, sometimes you can't. But having good people around you who you can not just confide in, who you can professionally work with. So I've worked with people in the past when I used to teach who didn't share resources. And it was almost like you were competing against them to give a good lesson, and they weren't sharing what you'd shared with them previously. So getting those right people around you is important. Recognizing when certain days our energy levels aren't as good as what they need to be. And if that's the day where it's like today, Monday's good, and I've got a bit of pain in my neck and I'm going to push myself a little bit, but I'm not going to ride past that curve of that U onto the other side. I'm just going to keep myself before I get to real flow, and I do what I think I need to do. I'm not going to beat myself up emotionally. So that's the way I'm going to face my day today, as you face your day on Wednesday. So I think that's a good example of working with how you're feeling for that moment, having good people around you. And the other thing I mentioned briefly before is writing stuff down. When we write stuff down, it captures those thoughts. The biggest problem we've got with writing stuff down is we make long lists, and the long list can be very defeating. And there's a guy in America called Brian Tracy, and he talks about lists are great, he said, but you might find that when you've done all your lists, you put more on the list, which is not the idea. Another aspect of lists is if you've got a very difficult job and you put it on your list and you don't keep doing it, it makes you feel bad about yourself. He said, well, take it off your list for 2 weeks. If it's really important, it'll come back again. So it's an interesting way to look at lists and capturing stuff. So capturing is good. Don't let it, override your emotions and your intelligence. It's there to capture it, and you can put it down and pick it up at any time you want. So these are little tips with people around you, that not pushing yourself too much, writing stuff down is very good. If you link that to something I mentioned before with, steady exercise, being outdoors, getting half decent sleep hygiene, less fatty foods and more unprocessed natural vegetables and fruits. The feedback doesn't come immediately, but over months you'll start feeling better with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ross. I always take so much from your sessions, and I'm going to remember Dr. Hansen's Thriving Every Day of Your Life. That's going to be what I'm aiming for. And the reflection, how important that is with everything that we do in our development. So I'm just going to ask everybody to take a second now to put something in the chat panel or the Q&A, your reflection on what you can use from this session going forward. So what do you think? And whilst you're doing that, just before we end, we have lots of resources across Kaplan, as we've spoken about before, but there's a lot on the Kaplan website and for apprentices on the Learning Through the Lockdown, which is actually just being renamed to Learning My Way microsites, because we hope still out of lockdown. We have a safeguarding team there to support you as well. And Ross will be back with us on Wednesday, the 17th of November. And in that session, we're going to talk about overcoming procrastination, which I'm thinking lists, Ross, but maybe not, negative thoughts, nerves, and perfectionism. So we really look forward to you joining us then. I've put my email address in the chat panel earlier, so if anyone would like the grit exercise, do drop me a line and we'll get that off to you this week. But until then, wish you all a really good month, and do join us again on the 17th of November at 12 o'clock. Many thanks indeed. Ross, any final things you'd like to say, Ross, before we stop the recording?
No, thank you for the 27 participants who giving it their time, and the ones who are going to follow us on catch up. Take it steady, take it slow. Don't beat yourself up. Congratulate yourselves on the small wins. And to make that very simple for you, for today only, look for those champagne moments today when things have gone well, because there's always some, more than you think. Look for those champagne moments.
Absolutely. Lovely. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Manisha. Thank you for taking part. Thanks, Anna. And we'll stop the recording now.